All right, Matt Oppenheim, it is all you, sir. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Yes, actually, right now I'm feeling um, such a depth of appreciation through this conference. It really feels magical. I really feel like I'm speaking to planet Earth, and I see friends that I've known all my life and people who have advanced forward so magically. So you can start the slideshow, Ricky.
All right. Thank you. Just one moment.
All right. Am I going to be moving the slides?
Well, I'll take care of that for you. Just let me know when you're ready.
All right. So I just want to contribute my one grain of corn to this wonderful cornucopia of presentations. And people who know Indigenous people know that corn is the essence of life. So I started with this title, Transforming Climate Disaster and Indigenous Answers, Planetary Survival and Resilience. After 3 years of deep research into Indigenous cultures, my findings were that the watershed is the deepest resonance of our worldview. And all Indigenous cultures have the ontology, have the experience of the watershed in their heart. So where's my into my slide?
Sorry, we're just setting up a translator, but we'll put it right back.
Okay.
All right, we're all back set up. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. So in front of us is a really incredible illustration of Awapua, the watershed of Hawaii. And what actually happened when they founded Hawaii is that the population grew dramatically until at the time of Captain Cook, there were 300,000 people on the land. So, in order to survive, in order to be resilient, they created this splendorous interactive system in the watershed. From the top of the mountain, where they have old growth forests, to human nurtured forests, to different ponds and fields and terrace farming and manufacturing processes down towards the ocean. It all created one magical entity, um, which would they survive for many hundreds of years. Okay, next slide, please. So my talk is not exactly just about innovations and things to do. It's about taking a deep dive into the experience, the worldview of the indigenous. And I really love this painting. It's a painting by Levon Lancaster, a member of the Pueblo Indians in New Mexico. And he and fellow artists did a pilgrimage throughout their ancient watershed of the Rio Grande River. So if you just let your eyes drink in the picture here, it's not what we're used to seeing as a map of the Rio Grande. It's the experience, the ancient experience of the watershed. Ancestors at the top, old growth forest at the top, and different symbols and images of what's important. And so this reflects, thousands of years of experience, passing on the story of the ancient modern time. Okay, next. I contrast that with a map we're mostly familiar with. When we want to go somewhere, this is the map that matters to us. Um, it's flat, it's not so interesting, but it is our ontology now for most of us when we travel. We're not seeing the watershed. So I'll just quote from my book. The difference between the watershed and the urbanized world is that the concrete in which you walk and within you live, the asphalt that you drive upon, the metals and resources used to make your car, your home, or your workplace were all extracted from watersheds. don't realize they're part of a watershed. And in most cases in our capitalist society, they come from other places in the world. They disguise what's really beneath your feet. Next. A little bit about myself and my journey into the watershed. In 1991 in Australia, I did a year-long study of the Murray-Darling watershed, which feeds Brisbane, Melbourne, and Sydney. And so it was very obvious that there was a huge crisis in the watershed. The rural areas were in desperate shape, but the metropolitan areas were depending on them. So I met with Green Party and activists and NGOs to develop a common platform. The same years, I published my book, To Color a Warrior. In 1993, I helped start the River School, and I'm so delighted that so many teachers in the school are here and maybe here with this talk. In 2000, I became a watershed, adopted watershed educator. It's a global movement of people working with education in the watershed. In 2002, I was given the honor of being a fellow with the Society for Applied Anthropology. Applied anthropology puts into practice anthropological skills to solve community problems. From 1975 to 2010 was my education. It's a long time. My BA, MA in anthropology, and my PhD essays in transformative anthropology or educational anthropology. I've been teaching anthropology for 23 years. People call me Dr. O through service learning, developing large collaboratives, etc. In 2005, my dissertation was working with a small Mayan village. That was really a deep plunge into the watershed. We're nurturing the forest and developing Mayan milpa. And then finally, in 2017, I started researching and writing the book that this presentation is about. I'm now seeking literary agent. Next. I just want to make sure everyone can hear me. My voice is all right, flowing all right.
Yes.
So post a
Thank you.
chat if I'm not doing well. So next slide. Okay, this I faced a crisis, and a lot of our presenters are talking about the crisis that we feel. It's the absolutely awful, traumatic experience of climate change, how we become resilient from that. So this picture is a picture a lot of us have seen of a ferry boat bearing refugees from Africa over to Europe, where they faced these horrible, horrible camps with filth and lack of water. And a lot of them knew they were going to be giving their lives to that. I started crying when I saw that photo. And then after a few days, I really started waking up and say, what can I contribute with my life for the rest of my lifetime towards changing our planet? And when I thought about the reason why these people were drowning, I'm not sure they all related to this, but they include drought, desertification, rapid fires, pollution, rising seas, rural decline, dying cities, violent regimes, dead rivers, floods, and hurricane. I do believe in this presentation, I'm going to address these catastrophes and what we can do fairly efficiently to return the planet to resilience. Next. So there's two things I emphasize. One thing is our evolutionary ecology from the picture at the bottom. This is a oil painting from the wife of an archaeologist that came to Tanzania at Olduvai Gorge. That's the famous site that the Leakeys discovered. And this 1.8 million year old micro watershed. She drew this painting based on fossil analysis. And we can see, for me, it's like it's a watershed. You have a pond or a lake or a river, and you have the plantation of plants around the river, and you have the animal life, and then the savanna, and then the woods, where people sought shelter, they slept there, and had their resources. So I'm just trying to convince you that the watershed has been in our evolutionary ecology, the conditioning of our mind for a long time. Our ancestors were named for watershed niches, i.e., born in a cycle of pine, people of the clouds, and pattern, where the water cascades out rocks. So that was they were named for these things. They represented, they emanated these parts of our ecology because it was always within and on their bodies and flowing through their senses, stories, and memories. Next. So I love this picture. It is originally a satellite photo, and it's taken of all of planet Earth. It has the United States with its watersheds. And of course, this has been enhanced to emphasize the watersheds and has different colors depending on the major watersheds that feed our societies. Just for us to realize this really is something that permeates our souls very deeply. Next slide. Prabhat Ranjan Sarkar wrote in Ideal Farming Part 2 30 years ago. Soon there will be a severe crisis in many parts of the world. Many large rivers like the Ganga, Jamuna, and Thames are already very polluted. People cannot drink this water, and if they even wash their hands in it, they can become infected. The only solution is to rely on rainwater. We must collect the rainwater, develop the science of making artificial rain through helium or any other process, and bring the clouds which rain over the ocean into the land. Constructing more deep true wells is not the answer. Rather, we must catch the rainwater where it falls. Many ponds, canals, dams, lakes, and reservoirs should be immediately constructed to catch the rainwater and store it for drinking water. This is the only way out of the water crisis that will confront the future. So Sarkar was very prescient. He saw things coming. He knew it was a desperate life and death situation. What's really fascinating is that Sarkar laid out a plan for watersheds, precisely for watersheds. He talked a lot about river valley civilization and how we flow through a watershed. And then he wrote a brilliant article about how to plant plants around creeks and lakes and plant food and resource products so that the whole watershed becomes something resplendent. So I've taken this idea and I have applied it to a variety of indigenous cultures around the planet. Next. In my book, there are 8 examples of resplendent watershed societies. You can just glance through these. The first I'm going to address is ancient Tikal and the Maya's foreign garden. This is about the truth about Mayan culture, not the myths that we have, that there was a huge barbarous civilization that slaughtered people and just had these massive temple. The true story of Maya is how they nurtured the rainforest. And I want to make an emphasis in saying that almost all of these are in an extreme paradox. On the one hand, the Maya have the solution for as many as 10 million people about how to learn their lifestyle. On the other hand, they are still facing genocide. Even today, at this moment, people are being slaughtered. So just look at these, that, and so many face this unbelievable paradox. That's the same with Black Lives Matter. So for me, this is like saying these are our marching orders, to go ahead. Next slide. We'll start with the Maya civilization. And in my book, I really want to help people transform, as so many people have been saying, the narrative that we live, the being in touch with the ancients, being able to adapt. So this is the Maya blessing ceremony that they start before any major activity. So I think it's really important here. We start this with this Mayan ceremony to continue our venture. In the name of the heart of the creator of the wind, in the name of the heart of the creator of fire, in the name of the heart of the creator of the earth, we give thanks to you that work with us. You creator, you planted us, you raised us, and you make us, you work us. You create all the trees, all the weeds, all the animals who take care of the mountains. You create the air, the clouds, and the wind. And for me, this is a deep neo-humanist invocation about merging your identity, merging your spirit in service of the planet. Next slide. So the Mayan area we're talking about is called the lowlands, and it's in what's called the Petén Forest of mainly Guatemala and parts of Mexico. And like I was saying, it proves there were like up to 1 million people that lived in this area. And because of this dispersion, because of this life in the rainforest, they're able to take care of everybody's needs. So I think it's a great example of how we can disperse our huge mega cities that have no purpose and actually keep the same population living in a resplendent environment. So it dispels so many myths of the Maya. Next slide. This is a layout of Tikal, one of the longest major civilizations of the Maya. It lasted up to 2,000 years. And what we see superficially kind of reinforces the myths that we think of the Maya. These huge temple complexes and sacrifice, this huge hierarchical society. But the truth was, this civilization was built as a magical water dispersion center. That was the purpose of building this. And the blue lines represent how they treated water, how they dispersed and managed water. And just look at the on the bottom, the squares are water cisterns and a filtration system. The arrow is rainfall. There are canals, ponds, lakes, reservoirs. I can't think of anything more precisely an emanation of Sarkar's philosophy than this. So what they did is their first thought in building this civilization was to dig out the cisterns from the rock, from the limestone rock. The next step was using the blocks from these cisterns to build these wonderful water management systems where the water flows down from the pyramids. The plaza is intentionally convex so that the water flows to the edges, flows to the cistern. And then this one dispersion system goes out like 50 miles all around this two tiny villages, small villages where families are nurturing the rainforest. There was a way for this civilization that had no lakes, no year-round rivers, yet through this wonderful water dispersion system, people were thriving. Next slide. Okay, the truth of the Mayan civilization through climate change and war for 8,000 years is Kanankat, the Maya's forest garden. And a lot of people who would see that say, I'm not sure I understand how that's a human nurtured forest. It just looks like a forest. But the Mayan would work for 30 or 40 years to make almost everything in their environment human accessible. Herbs and food and building materials, what you're looking at that nurtures all of human needs. On the right is how they achieve that. It's a cycle that lasts 30 years or so, in which they burn down the forest and they use the ashes left to create water systems and marshes. They plant corn, and then they plant other medicinal products, plants, until towards the top we see they have regrown the forest, this rainforest, within 30 years. Next slide. Next slide, please. All right. Now we're going to talk a little bit more about the Awapuaha from Hawaii. And just like the Maya, we're going to give an invocation so that we can give over our senses and our experience to this. Ancestors from the rising to the setting sun, from the zenith to the horizon, ancestors who stand at our back and front, you who stand at our right hand, a breathing into the heavens, an utterance in the heavens, a clear ringing voice in the heavens, a voice reverberating in the heavens. Here are your descendants, the Hawaiians, safeguard us. Next slide, please. So I've chosen this slide because it's such a brilliant layout of the whole watershed and how it creates everything humans are needed and nurtures the balance of nature. Again, like that picture on the left, we see all these uh, uh, plant fields and agricultural fields and ponds of water and indigenous herbs. And there's actually temples in there where people worship spirituality. And then down to the ocean where people are creating building materials and they're nurturing the marine ecology too. On the right is a more schematic depiction. It looks kind of like organs in the human body, but if you can read the details, they're creating everything you can see on the right. An example of ideal farming: streams, nurtured forest regeneration shrines, integrated agricultural plots, self-sufficient villages, nurturing marine and ocean biome. And this is an example, not just for Hawaii, it's for all subtropical biomes in the world. Next slide. All right, this is the third example of the Muslim watershed. We know that the terrain, the climate of these countries, Iran, Iraq, etc., had horrible hot deserts that people could not live in. So Muslim engineers, 5,000 years ago, created this amazing water distribution. And again, here's the feeling of the anthology behind it. In a garden, renew your Zoroastrian faith. Yes, in the sanctuary of the Magi, they honor us, where the fire that never dies burns strong within our hearts. And these gardens were meant to be contemplative spaces where anyone in the public, not just rich people, anybody could roam through and contemplate in the garden to return them logical balance. Next slide, please. This is how it worked. It's an amazing system. Okay, on the bottom, let's talk about how the system is grown. In the foothills of the large mountains, Taurus and Zagros Mountains, they would build. Are we okay? Does someone need to mute themselves? Thank you.
I'm muted. Go ahead.
The parallel tunnel to the aquifer. Okay, and it's so brilliant because it doesn't really take water from the aquifer. It only takes the water that keeps flowing. You see, it doesn't interfere. And then the wells that go up are what we see on the upper left. You see these brilliant channels and holes throughout the reef. And what happens in this situation is bacteria and algae-rich water comes to the surface, flows down the side, and is able to regenerate a desert, a complete regeneration of the desert. And these tunnels came into the large cities, came into the farming communities to create this resplendent society. It was also an underground, and still is an underground society, as we see in the middle, where beautiful caverns are carved out, mosques are carved out below ground. And then on the right, we see the ultimate ideal created with this system. It's a Persian carpet, and it shows the idealized resplendent watershed, like the other watersheds, with the top of the mountains with trees, water comes down, resplendent growth of birds and humanity. Actually, thousands, I think 3,000 of these qanats are still functioning right now. But a majority, I think at least 70%, have been broken down or built over. But for desert reclamation in the future, we can revive thousands, up to 5,000 of these in any desert culture. So this is a map of how these Kana and Kerez were distributed throughout the world. And it follows the conquering the conquest of Muslim Moorish society throughout much of the world, Jordan and Syria to Spain, into the New World, Morocco, Northern Africa, Afghanistan. And I want to make a special note that the Uyghur people, the Uyghur indigenous people in China, who now live in concentration camps, people are being killed. They've been forced to leave their land. It's a horror situation. But they were the ones, the Uyghur people were the ones in China to bring this throughout what they call the Turpan Peninsula. And they created the system of canals that developed the oases, enabling the Silk Road to flourish. Now they're being destroyed. Okay, next slide. So in this slideshow, I'm not arguing that we should just focus on the watershed. What I want this to be is a synthesis of all we do with neo-humanist education and Kraut. But there are a lot of innovations that we believe in that run counter to the flow of the watershed and may disrupt or reverse their splendid processes we saw in indigenous culture. So I want you to comment on the first slide. What do you observe happening? What's going on there? Can we view a few chat answers? What do you see going on there and happening? Is this good for the watershed or bad for people? Do we have some chats? I don't see anything yet. Good, that's right. Excellent, so many. Landslides, solar panels contribute to erosion. Seems not like a rational use of space and technology. Storm flow has disrupted the solar array. I couldn't express it better. Denuded this side of the mountain, destroying the biodiversity, right? Destroying the forest, and a hurricane came along and it was destroyed. So we have to be really careful with our new technological innovations to use them in the flow of the watershed. Let's talk about the second one, which may be a little bit difficult to discern. What does this scene tell you? What does this scene tell you about what we've been talking about the watershed? What may be good and what may be harmful? Let's see what comments you have. Excellent. Yeah, water runs because no vegetation is lacking. Many species were removed. Maybe a hurricane is nature's way of self-correcting. Earths can be killed. Well, actually, we have a really absurd picture there. We have these great wind turbines, which are good for generating electricity. And what's bad about what's below them? One, these are generally bioengineered plants. And many of you may know is that this was a dream that really turned sour, that the insects that the pesticides were meant to kill came back. They adapted and changed. Secondly, it has destroyed all the biodiversity that's there, the abilities for plants to survive and people and civilization. Also about the water flow, there ain't no water flow. That water isn't being channelized to be used anywhere. So I'd say the negatives, um, counterbalance the positive. Now, the bottom one might be a little more challenging for us to observe and tell what's going on there. So can you give us a chat about what you see there? Buildings and pavement in urban areas prevents water returning to soil. Excellent. Yeah. Yeah, actually what's going on here is, well, I'd say this is a great temporary solution to grow a garden and plant greenery, which helps to diminish global warming a little bit. But the story of our mega cities is something that isn't sustainable. Not at all. Our large urban cities depend on resources from across the planet. They sap the resources from all the rural regions they're building. These kind of buildings are still hot houses for global warming, the street, the asphalt on the street. So I argue that these megacities will be shifting. They have to be shifting. There's actually 10 I'm sorry, 12 that are on harbors and bays. As the water seas rise, they'll be gone. There's another 10 to 12 that are so hot that people cannot live in them anymore. Um, so yeah, we have to be, the proudest way of decentralizing society to a watershed society. I think is the way to go. Next. So this is just a diagram, an interesting article. Sorry, I have to take a drink of water. One of the most profound teachers I've had in my journey is an archaeologist at Cincinnati University named Vernon Scarborough. He wrote this book, The Power of Water, and studied how water is distributed in societies throughout time, all over the planet. And he found these common reasons for society to collapse and reasons why society flourishes. And it's exactly decentralization. And I like this diagram because it tells us almost immediately what's healthy and what isn't. You can see the centralized megacity approach, where the city is the hub of everything and drains everything from the rural regions, doesn't add any vitality. On the right, we see kind of a Walmart distribution diagram, again, which doesn't relate at all to the terrain or the watershed. In the middle is something I feel is just naturally very healthy, where people are living in decentralized systems, working with their watersheds, building a resilient society. In my experience, indigenous cultures want. Another thing is that I'm not imagining a complete return to these watersheds alone. But my work with indigenous people, and I suspect with you guys too, is that they want to keep their youth from leaving, either from war or from economic pressure. So what we need to do is weave in a proud society into this web so that we do have modern technology and key industries and co-ops um, to make it even more resplendent. Next slide. So I tried to find a good image, a good illustration of a proudest neo-humanist society and what it looks like within the watershed. I couldn't find anything very good, but this has some of the qualities of a new society. We see terrace gardening mingled in with these buildings and housing. We see forced reforestation in the same situation. I'm not sure if we see birds and animals. I'm sure they're there. And off in the distance, I'd like to say we see the whole flow of the watershed with the trees and higher mountains and things like that. So what this helps bring about for me, the importance of the watershed is that it's a synthesis of proud and neo-humanism. It develops decentralization, self-sustaining economy, economic democracy, cooperative economy, neo-humanist interrelationships with our biosphere, key industry, technology innovation, and basic necessities are automatically provided because everything is grown and produced there. Next slide. So I've done this research and it came to me that it's really not going to take that much time to return our planet to resilience. I mean, it's an ambitious project. A lot of people can't see that because they see so much desertification, pollution, death that is overwhelming. But I really see here, if we all work together, and I believe we should create a civilian conservation corps in the United States and all over the world, where youth who have no job training get dispersed out to these watersheds and work hard at replanting forests, at utilizing the water and everything. I'm kind of Pollyannish. I like to dream big, but that could be a way. But I just want to show you that it really doesn't take long to revive these amazing systems. On the upper left, we have Persian system to flower the desert, which can be done in 20 to 40 years. On the right, it's like the Mayan forest garden. It actually starts from the ash and is restored in 30 to 40 years. So, oh, sorry, deserts can fully flower from 10 to 20 years. A lot of your mangrove swamps which are deep carbon sinks, they also nurture 30% of our marine ecology. Mangrove trees grow 1 foot per year. They currently absorb 20% of carbon dioxide. The Mangrove Alliance is a huge planetary alliance of government input and NGO input, and their goal, and I think it's very realistic, is to gain 20% by 2030. That would have a huge effect on global warming. Another thing is, how do we disperse large cities? Them as ghost towns? No, I mean, there's a lot of things in great big cities. Events, the history, the architecture. But what I realized is that the life of buildings that are built are intentionally not very long. With real estate costs, they want to tear down buildings and build even bigger buildings, wasting more resources. So what I learned is that most housing or education or community projects and shopping malls only last like some 30 years before they're torn down or left abandoned. So that gives us plenty of time and resources to large skyscrapers, only have a life or any kind of architecture between 30 and 100 years. So that doesn't take that long, right? For us to leave the paradigm of the huge city and capitalism and be able to redistribute our lives in watershed. Next slide. So I haven't talked exactly about how exactly each of these examples reverses global warming, climate impact. It should be very obviously, it reverses global warming very quickly through development of forests that attract rain, resplendent plantation, prevents the impacts of hurricanes and floods. Um, the mangrove swamps were the main way that we deferred the impacts of hurricanes and floods in the past. Now they've all been torn down for the tourist industry, for um, ocean industries and things like that. Bringing back the mangroves has a major effect. Captures maximum rainwater. I think you'll intuitively see that these indigenous watershed projects really are amazing miracles in capturing rainwater, prevents pollution, it disperses megacities, addresses deforestation and desertification, reverses the surge of refugees around the planet, reverses the impact of fossil fuels, and it stops the need for global trade, one of the most horrible things we have, where things are manufactured in China and sent all the way around the world, wasting so much oil and energy. It will gradually decrease sea level. It will reverse the impacts of global capitalism and integrate all scientific and technological innovation. Next slide, which I think is the last slide. Boy, I'm going fast, aren't I, Ricky? So I'm writing this book and giving this presentation not to be in a solution on its own. All my life, the people that know me, I've been more of a grassroots activist, more of a grassroots anthropologist. I just felt so terrible that I really had to look deeply within myself. But these are action plans I planned after the book to develop curriculum for this kind of watershed, fusing together permaculture and the watershed. Maybe you can read through these as I'm talking about it. Right now, maybe a lot of you aren't aware that there are huge biodiversity collaboratives around the world. I have the Japanese example of Satoyama and Satumi. They have created a network of 135 projects around the world and I think 40 to 50 countries. And these are supported by governments. These initiatives are supported by governments. And of course, the local leaders on the local level and indigenous people. So these initiatives are not marginal initiatives. They are huge initiatives that change the world. On the right, we have, eco communities. Neo-humanism sponsors these great eco communities. In fact, we have an incredible one where I live here in Asheville, North Carolina. And the purpose of these is to give an example to whatever you call it, the region, the bioregion, the watershed, of how to address everything to bring resplendence back to the watershed. A lot of these have already developed their potential and are working with the watershed. A lot of them are learning great examples of intercropping, and it's really Sarkar's system of ideal farming. So another form of action is to help them collaborate with each other, bring more funding. Um, as I said, there's so many global collaboratives. I'm joining them. Part of the purpose of my book is to promote each of the indigenous practices as a global movement. Right now, some of them are isolated from each other. And I'm also going to be developing his curriculum. I want to start a model project. I'm looking at grants right now and encourage everyone that we need to collaborate with all climate change initiatives. The youth movement, the tremendous technological innovations, etc. So let me read some of these chats. That's actually, Ricky, can you believe it? It's the end of my talk. When I practiced this with Ricky, it went like 10 minutes overtime, but we're really good timing.
Just
Okay.
enough time for questions. Yes, absolutely.
Let me look at the chat. Beautiful work, Matt. Very inspires and kudos on the book, brother. Nice. You gently pulled us in, Matt. Great visuals and an uninspiring vision for what is possible. I think they meant to be maybe inspiring. For me, it is not cockeyed optimism that you're describing what Joanna Macy calls active hope. Really beautiful. Amazing presentation. Thanks a lot for your groundbreaking work. Great presentation. New humans of the world have our work cut out for us. And for me, I this is not an independent project. I mean, the more I've listened to, what really inspired me was Marcus Bussey's poet about the deep indigenous experience. It gave me a profound experience inside my own body, mind, and spirit. So the thing that I really want to emphasize is us being the watershed, being the watershed. So one thing that helped me when I drove through a city is now I only see the trees. I don't see the concrete buildings as much anymore because the concrete buildings aren't aren't interesting, don't change or adapt or evolve over time. But if you stare at a tree or a circle of trees, grows, it's an amazing experience of our brother and sister of planet Earth. Well, I thank you very, very much. This seems like this is really participatory, and I've got my email there if you ever want to contact me. Thank you so much. Are there any final thoughts? Yeah, you can get. It's a plan in which these things are happening where you are. Watersheds are everywhere. There are watershed initiatives wherever you are. There's things action for you to take. Well, thank you very, very much, Jenny. Ricky, how did that
Yes,
go?
yeah, it went very well. I think we still probably want to give a little time to read some of the comments here. I'm not sure if you saw the one about Gay Ferguson. Had you seen that one already?
Let me take a look.
Inspires me to get involved more locally with climate action initiatives and to understand
Yes.
our watershed here.
Yeah. All you have to do, I mean, sometimes in writing my book, I felt like a brick wall or that everything stopped. I didn't know how to go further. And I just walked the watershed where I was in Albuquerque, the wonderful Rio Grande watershed. And immediately that consciousness returned to me, and I was able to keep writing. How involved are many indigenous people on this? Tremendously, tremendously. you know, in my case studies, I talk about how they're expanding this and how indigenous people are out. The largest initiative is the Japanese Satoyama and Satumi, um, which which are hill villages to sea villages. The people nurture the whole environment from the tops of mountains to the sea. And this has become a major initiative funded by the United Nations University and the Department of the Environment of Japan. So they are developing a synergy, like I think I said, amongst 130 projects like this. I think part of the sad part is we know the exploitation, the slaughter, the horrible things indigenous peoples are going through, and how desperate for our planet and for indigenous people it is right now to wage a battle with the forces that are destroying indigenous lands and indigenous people. So if I see a way forward in a new direction, I don't need to see it. It's there, really. It's there. It's all around us. It just isn't much in the news or maybe in your neighborhood. But no, it's all there and it's moving quickly towards a really amazing direction. You know, we just have to shift from our capitalist and urban mind, right? And like everybody's been presenting through neo-humanist education, a new philosophy. Um, oh yeah, I see Ashrita. Great. Uh, fantastic graphics and images as a watershed restoration manager in Maine. I would live to use some of them to explain the Water Connectivity Coalition building I am doing with Land Trust to line up with the Maine climate action change. Brilliant, brilliant. There are a lot of members, the New Humanist members that are doing this work right now, right? Fundamental, deep work right now. Thank you, Ashrita. Ashrita. And she put a tree and a heart. Thank you. So I really hope to work with all of you doing your wonderful things and integrate that into our curriculum. The wonderful examples of neo-humanist songs and poetry and permaculture, you know, yeah, it all really since that I'm sure we're all feeling through this conference how everything is like synthesizing together.
There was one other question. I'm looking for it in the thread, but it was, Reka, I saw here the refugee question above. Was there one that we missed?
Yes, someone just, it just a little bit above, someone asked about any way forward with the Mediterranean refugees.
Specifically to the Mediterranean refugees.
Yeah, well, I mean, of course, the immediate resolution is that of conflict and war. But everything I'm suggesting here is the way to prevent refugees from happening. Part of the crisis of the refugees is the destruction of the rural areas. And people find they can only find a life in the megacities. It's a paradox where there is no life in the big cities. You know, they're living in slums. They don't have jobs. So, you know, as capitalism diminishes and we focus in our rural areas, people want to stay at home. They will stay at home. You know, the question is how quickly can we do it? People still will be dying and suffering, you know, which is horrible. Young children dying of starvation, desertification. It's just a horror, you know, and that's why I'm saying don't just follow what I'm talking about. Let's follow all the technologies that can be used immediately. Solar, you know, there's amazing technologies out there I could go into, but we don't have much time. In Tibet, they're creating new kind of mini glaciers, taking the water down to the desert and creating mini glaciers. There's also a submarine that's being developed that can build ice fields in the Arctic. So we can actually work quickly to rebuild the Arctic. There's just no, I mean, some of you are probably aware of these innovations, but there are amazing scientific innovations that can bring about this change more rapidly. I took photos from your PowerPoint. Can I put them on FB? I live in an eco-village. Great. And I have friends in the Amazon. Wow, great. How can people access my PowerPoint? Ricky.
Yes, I can. If you can send your request, just put your email there in the chat, and I'll make sure to get you a copy of that.
Excellent. Wow, this is really something that touches my heart. This has just inspired me to write an eco-theater melodrama about Indigenous society in the watershed. Thank you. That is so inspiring, and I've been thinking about that a lot. Yeah, yeah. Create a drama and activity. In fact, I attended one in Santa Fe, New Mexico, where they had different characters of the animals in the watershed. They had like sound effects of the hurricanes and the destruction and bringing back to harmony. Oh, I just love the idea of bringing art, dance, music into this. Yeah.
We do have just about 4 minutes left. So again, if participants would like to ask any other questions, and then we will be transitioning into our next program after a short break.
From the bottom of my heart and the bottom of my soul, thank you so much for listening.
And thank you, Matt. I think I speak for the majority of what I'm seeing here in the thread. Very, very inspiring and well done presentation. So we're very thankful for the time that you spent preparing and also presenting this information for us today. So we will take a moment, a brief break here, just about 3 minutes, and then we do have a bit of musical interlude. So for the next hour or so, we'll have some muralist presentation as well as vocalist. We'll also be transitioning our hosts. And so we'll be welcoming Pratik to the host